What's going on, YouTube? Culturedog Sam Hatch back here with a quick Blu-ray review. I got in the mail last week a screener copy of the newly released Uncut Gems, so I figured we'll yap about this for a hot minute. Yeah, Uncut Gems is the newest film from the Safdie brothers. I have not seen their earlier film, Good Time, from 2017 with Robert Pattinson, but I've heard it's pretty intense, and I heard, obviously, a lot of buzz about this film in particular, and, Adam Sandler's made a few bids at, serious acting before, but this time he seemed to stick the landing, so I really wanted to check it out. And really nice slip here. I love the cover art alone. Like, if you look at it very quickly, it looks like someone smoking, Adam Sandler smoking a cigarette or being cool or something, and it's only when you take a closer look you realize, oh yeah, he's pretty messed up and he's got tissue in his nose and he's been beaten. It's very indicative of the film itself. It's a very dark film, and it's set in a specific period of time in New York City, even though it's inspired by 80s New York City, but it's in like the 2011-2012 period, gives it an opportunity to play with a lot of pop cultural references around the time, specifically The Weeknd coming up, and he's wrapped in with one of the main characters played by Julia Fox, who's a side piece essentially for Adam Sandler's main character, Howard Ratner, who works in the jewelry district in Manhattan and has a lot of, high-profile clientele. A lot of the film is set within his shop, and there's a real claustrophobia, especially in terms of the buzzers that, there's the little kind of vestibule you get stuck in as you're buzzed in from the outside door into the inside of the shop, and then it's pretty close quarters once you're in there as well, and there's all this tension about people leaning on the glass cases and everything like that. The entire film is felt to me like the last 20 minutes of Goodfellas, where Ray Liotta is going on this like cocaine fueled paranoia binge. It just like sustains that level of a fever pitch throughout the film's running time. And this one is, strangely, for such a film that feels like cocaine, the motion picture, the drug of choice in this is gambling. And Howard has a lot of opportunities. He's got Lakeith Stanfield, who's a slightly sketchy associate who does bring him, celebrities, and Howard tries to sell off like goofy things like Furbies encrusted in jewels and things like that. And then early on in the film, it just throws you in like in media res. Like, it doesn't hold your hand. It's similar in ways to Steven Spielberg's old school dialogue, in which it's all layered over one another. But even characters talking and no pauses for one person to get their point across. But I think Spielberg stuff was even a little bit more structured than this. This is very chaotic, and it takes a little while for you to kind of get a feel for what's going on. And it even starts before that with a bit of this rare black opal being mined, and then it goes into this very Fight Club-esque opening credits where you're through visual effects traveling within the striations and colors of this opal. And then it transitions into a colonoscopy that Howard is undergoing, just to kind of put you on edge and have you wonder what's going to go wrong for this guy. So he has this opal smuggled in and is showing it to Kevin Garnett, even though he should be focusing on putting it up for auction. And Kevin Garnett, at the time, playing for the Celtics, is obsessed with the stone now and thinks that it's going to imbue him with almost supernatural properties. And Howard, he's just tiring. He's this character that does have these moments of luck, and he's like the uncut gem, the title of the film. He's this character that has these moments of brilliance and luck, but he's just surrounded by this hard rock. And he's a bit of a knucklehead, and he says things he shouldn't say, and the moment he catches a break, he gambles it on something else. So there's all sorts of questions about how he got the life he has, because he does have a wife who's rather tired of his stuff at this point of the film starting, but played by Idina Menzel. But he's got kids. One kid seems like he's growing up to be a Howard Jr. type, obsessed with sports and action. And And yeah, then he's found the time to hook up with Julia Fox's character, who's a little bit of a mover and a shaker in the New York music scene. And there's just so much going on, and it just keeps on moving and keeps on moving. And this guy, he's just the guy who's got so many balls up in the air, and he almost forgets about stuff that he pawns like a minute after he pawns it. But of course, he makes all these promises. He's coming back for things. And there's this kind of wave of, repercussions rolling behind this dude. And there's characters coming out of the woodwork to collect on debts, including Eric Bogosian's character and his muscle men. Really fascinating, thematic subject matter there. I don't really want to spoil anything, but the cast is nuts. There's even some kind of throwaway cameos in there. You're like, what is this all about? Judd Hirsch is really good in a supporting role. And yeah, it's just intense and off-putting. And it's funny because my wife watched it and she enjoyed the film, but was also annoyed by like how bad of a person Howard was. And he's not quite as horrible a character as in the Bad Lieutenant films or anything like that. But he does just keep making the worst decisions. And you as a viewer, he has to really work to retain your sympathies. And sometimes you're like, oh man, this guy really deserves this. But yeah, again, he does have these moments where you're like, oh, maybe he can pull this off. And the look of it is fantastic. It's mentioned before, it's inspired by New York of the 80s. And Darius Kanji did the cinematography. He's a legend in my mind from filming David Fincher's Seven. And this film in particular is far more kind of like vibrant and luscious than I expected, because a lot of it is the steel and the asphalt and the skyscrapers. But again, it's again that uncut gem turned into a film. There's all these beautiful colors and moments captured within that steel cityscape. So yeah, it really blew me away, like visually more so than I anticipated, and like the amount of like deep blacks, and yeah, it's just a really rich, vibrant looking film, and widescreen, so that was nice. And it was a mix of film and digital, so it's good seeing some actual like anamorphic lenses being used, which was Darius Kanji's choice. But yeah, it's just really intense stuff, and I personally love the Safdie brothers. And their insistence on data mining reality and time in particular, because they really wanted to have this, once they got the weekend involved, they wanted to have this take place in a particular time frame. And then they're like, well, we also want to have this film based around betting on particular sporting events, namely Boston Celtics games. And then they also wanted to involve one of the players as a main character in the film, so they needed the player that had since retired and was looking to become an actor, and then also have been part of 3 games in a row that were close enough to the New York area that they could write all these scenes around those events, and then also have enough of a roller coaster ride in terms of scoring to make it work narratively. And most people really would never have gone that far, but these guys did. They went through and they checked all the stats, they looked, and then once they found the games, then they had to decide on their actor based on the available players. And unbelievably, they got Kevin Garnett, who was really good in here. I was very impressed by his performance and the fact that he has a lot more screen time than I anticipated. Lakeith Stanfield is also fantastic. He's just great in everything I've seen him in the past couple of years. So knocked it out of the park. And Adam Sandler is just crushing it in this film. I guess if there's any quote unquote quibbles I would have about the film, is that One of Tricks Point Never, Daniel Lopatin, is the guy's real name, but he's like an ambient electronic artist. His score at times, much like the score for It Follows, worked strangely for me. It's so overpowering and demanding that sometimes it doesn't feel like it organically flows with the film and seems more distracting at times. But then this entire film is like pretty much about creating an anxiety within the viewer that also kind of worked. And, he gives huge homage to the Geno Yamashiragumi track, Canada, from the Akira soundtrack. So, yeah, I can't hate the guy for that. So, Yeah, so it's got a real interesting score. It doesn't always flow with the imagery, and it kind of like is, I guess it works as a juxtaposition at times. And then the other thing is Adam Sandler's performance does kind of, there's this like Venn diagram where his performance crosses over into certain similarities with his comedic roles, because he wasn't doing traditional yuck pratfall kind of humor. He was doing these like deeply disturbed man children, not too far afield from a Howard Ratner from Uncut Gems. So he would employ these actual outrageous like bursts of anger and like raised voice and screaming and things like that. So when he employs that in this film in a serious role, almost as a Adam Sandler viewer and fan, your kind of instinctual muscle memory is to think, oh, this is a comedic, wacky, over the top freak out of his, instead of like, this is a moment of gravitas in this film with this character who's in a dire situation and is really going through some tough times. So, and that's not really a fault of his, it's just that it's interesting to see him employ some of the same kind of mechanisms in comedy and in a little bit more of a serious film here. There are moments of levity throughout mixed in, but yeah, it is also pretty much heartbreaking because there's, and not even just him, like even Eric Bogosian's character, there's a sadness imbued within some of his choices he's forced to make, and it's just this guy, man, no matter how much rope you give him, he just keeps shaping that noose. Yeah, gorgeous stuff, really inventive widescreen cinematography. And I was glad to check it out on Blu-ray. This has got a couple discs, DVD and Blu-ray. I would definitely like to see it on 4K as well, but it looks fantastic on Blu-ray. Just really rich colors, deep blacks, and I was knocked out at the picture quality. The audio is really interesting. Again, I mentioned before, the soundtrack is so powerful and heavy. A lot of it comes from behind you, and it just kind of keeps you on edge throughout. The dialogue is really interesting because some of the more, as I mentioned before, chaotic bits with people talking over each other is kind of mixed strangely in the soundstage and kind of muted sometimes and mixed across the front three speakers. And then there are other moments where you're almost after you're thinking, is there something wrong with my receiver? And then there's Howard talking to somebody and he's just like a dead on strong presence coming out of the center speaker. And it's only a 5.1 DTS HD master audio track, so it's not 7.1, but it does make a lot of use of the surrounds, mostly for music and things like that, but sometimes other ambient noises. And he's always out in the streets doing things. But yeah, the mixing of the dialogue was really interesting. And overall, it's just got a kind of interesting mix, sometimes unsettling, but definitely fascinating stuff. Extra-wise, it's pretty lean. There's a lot of these kind of A24 smaller films, and this one's also Lionsgate. They're dropping cheap on Blu-ray, which is nice, but you don't get a ton of special features. And one imagines that there is a slew of potential Criterion Collection releases in the future for all these films, going back to The Witch, and even recently, Parasite dropped really cheaply on Blu-ray, and that's already been announced as a Criterion Collection. So eventually they're going to start mining all these A24 titles and other kind of indies that are going for this new cinema feel, all these post-horror films, etc. So this one eventually, I'm guessing, is going to be a Criterion Collection. But for now, it does have a special feature, Money on the Street, the making of Uncut Gems, and it is actually pretty damn good. It's about a half an hour, and it's a decent deep dive into the creation of the film. And obviously you have some interviews with the Safdie brothers. The one with Sandler himself is a little weird. It's kind of strange and off-putting. And then Julia Fox is in there, and they get just about everybody you need to hear from talking about the film. And it was a decent making of. It was a little bit more in-depth than I was expecting. I thought it was just going to be one of those quick, kind of fluff pieces. And then, that's about it. But it's a, gorgeous film, and I sadly missed it in theaters, but I was psyched to be able to grab it here on Blu-ray. And it does come with the digital copy as well. Like there's just the style of the cover, just the small print, about the Blu-ray and DVD and digital up there. It's just cool. It's classy looking. I like, it's got a little bit of silver foil there, and if you kind of move it around in the light, it looks different at different positions. But there you go. That's a quick take on the Lionsgate A24 release, Uncut Gems. Definitely not a feel-good pick-me-up film, yeah, but definitely a fascinating tale of, one man's descent into a hell of his own making. Yeah, so maybe you dig it. Check it out. Let me know what you think about it below. I'm sure a lot of you guys saw it in the theaters already. So, Uncut Gems. Cheers, everybody. We'll be back with some more videos. I got a book review, Blu-ray review mixture coming up, and all sorts of fun stuff. So, talk to you later. Peace.